I really want to paint a picture for you tonight of a bit of background information of how we've gotten to where we are. And a lot of this, I believe, is wrong. I believe that's why we have an epidemic of obesity. So I'm going to start with a little bit of some different information and take a look at the picture on the right. And I wonder how many of you see a duck? Anybody raise your hands? How many of you see a rabbit? Okay, about half and half. So really what's interesting is the same information can be viewed very differently. And these are where we talk about paradigm shifts. And what that is a paradigm is a change in the basic assumptions, or paradigms, we can call them that, within the ruling theory of science. And this has happened many times in history. If you look back, it was known that the world was flat. How'd that turn out? There's a lot of examples, really, the theory of gravity that took a long time to be accepted. Quantum physics, that's still, it's pretty well accepted, but still that took a long time. And a big one that we'll talk about tonight is all calories being created equal. So my question is, what if everything that you've been told for the last 30 years about dieting has been wrong? You know, what if fats don't make you fat? What if diet is just a way of eating, a lifestyle way of eating, and not something where you have to limit yourself or starve yourself? So these will be things we'll discuss. 20 years ago, when I was doing my master's in nutrition, my research was on weight loss recidivism. And that's just a fancy word for regaining the weight. And basically the statistic that I have up here is that 95% of people that lose weight regain the weight and more. And it's variable, the time frame, and they usually gain, as I said, more weight. The main thing that happens there is they do not make lifestyle changes. If you think about the concept of weight loss is actually quite simple. It is eat fewer calories than you expend. But the concept of being healthy, maintaining a healthy weight, keeping weight off, requires lifestyle changes. It requires a lot more than simply going on a starvation diet. And that's why diets don't work. So when I talk about diet tonight, I'm going to talk about a way of eating, not being on a diet. All right, so tonight we're going to dispel some of these myths, and we're going to talk about strategies for success. Okay, got to paint the picture a little bit more and address some underlying assumptions. Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, considered to be the father of medicine. He has many wonderful quotes, but let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. I live by this with my practice every day. You know, Oriana, we're all on the same page with that. We have an epidemic of chronic disease in our country. We're better at keeping people alive once they are sick, but we're failing miserably at preventing illness in the first place. And that's what we really want to get to. We want to get to prevention. It's wonderful that we have medicine to save us from trauma, from a disease, but how about preventing the disease from even happening? So what I want to address a little bit is that the mechanistic view of the body is what is kind of our accepted view today in medicine. When you go to the doctor, they believe the body is a machine. And this paradigm came about several hundred years ago, but really modern medicine focuses on specialties. And the specialist tends to pay attention to their organ of specialty or their area of specialty. And we have forgotten that the leg bone is connected to the hip bone. I mean, we've forgotten this whole connection. And really, the body is not a machine. The body is incredibly adaptive. It lives and functions as a whole. And with medicine, we're looking at if it can't be, got pictures here, cut or drugged. Usually we think, oh, it can't be treated. And that's a lot of the people that we see in our practice have been people that kind of have been, no, you don't fit, we can't do anything here in medicine. So we end up seeing a lot of people. And there's some wonderful things that can be done. So we have a message of hope. The holistic viewpoint suggests that everything is interconnected. Some areas are more closely connected, just like in the spider web. And notice that if you tug on one of the strands of the spider web, it can be felt in varying degrees throughout the entire web. This is how it is with our body. And this is actually how we believe at Shoreline Center for Healing. This is how we view the body. We want to look at the whole picture and the connections. The study of how environmental factors affect gene expression is epigenetics. This is a new field of study. I talked about this last year. It's still up and coming. It's very exciting. You can look up stuff about this. But this new field of epigenetics is showing how your environment and your choices can influence your genetic code. And there was a cover on Time magazine showing, the title was Why Your DNA Isn't Your Destiny. So when you start delving into this, some of the statistics, it shows that about 80% of your genes can be turned on or off by the choices that you make. And that's very empowering. I think that's a message of hope, because we used to be told, oh, well, I still hear people say this, well, we have this in my family, and so I'm destined to have that. And it's really not true. The science is showing us that that is not true. More genetic research shows that the habits you inherit from your family are more important than the genes that you inherit. And this I thought was very interesting. Obesity genes account for only 5% of all weight problems. So what causes the other 95% of the weight problems? Why don't we ever hear this? I think it's because we have a multi-billion-dollar food industry. And again, that's why I'm so glad that we have Oriana allowing individuals and similar like minds coming together to be able to do classes like this to get the word out. And one of my favorite quotes is, good health makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make a lot of money. So I'm thrilled that we can come together and talk about these things, and maybe have you question a little bit of where we're at with some of the mainstream things we're being told. Okay, we have an epidemic of obesity in America. I think that's established. It's the single most important public health issue facing us today in this country. So if genes don't account for obesity, then maybe, what do you think? It's a high-fat diet that's to blame. And really, that's been the common belief since nutritional guidelines came out with low-fat guidelines in the 70s. So it seems logical that eating fat makes you fat, because fat contains 9 calories per gram. So it would seem that the more fat you eat, the more calories you eat, and that would make you gain weight. But that's not what the science is showing us. Really, the best predictor of obesity is what your insulin secretion is like. And insulin, if you remember, we're not going to get real deep into this, I'm sure you're glad, as am I, but insulin is a hormone made by the pancreas. And if you remember, it is like a key. It unlocks a cell so that your blood glucose, your blood sugar, can go into the cell. The cell can't get it otherwise. It could be sitting, just, basting in sugar, but if the cell doesn't have insulin, it cannot accept that sugar. So that's the key there. So back to our obesity with our insulin secretion. Those people who have the highest insulin secretion tend to gain the most weight, and most of it as belly fat, compared to low insulin secretors. They don't gain weight as easily, and they don't gain that abdominal fat. And people who have high insulin secretions and eat a low-fat diet gain even more weight than if they ate a higher fat diet. Everybody got that? Tracking with me? So insulin stimulates hunger. It really does 2 major things. It stimulates hunger, and it's a fat storage hormone, which again makes you store abdominal fat. After you eat a high carbohydrate meal, your insulin spikes and your blood sugars plummet because your blood sugar is going into the cells. So then you become hungry. And that is why people crave more carbohydrates, more sugar, and you eat more the rest of the day. Another area that this applies to is with cholesterol and inflammation. It appears that the best way to address your cholesterol is not necessarily eating a low-fat diet. We've been told that for a very long time. But it's actually to eat a low glycemic diet, which is going back to sugar, carbohydrates, which keep your blood sugars level. And inflammation, we can talk more about this later, but inflammation really is starting to come out as being one of the main reasons for a lot of chronic disease. You know, if cholesterol was the issue with heart disease, you know, we've been treating cholesterol for a very long time and very actively with a lot of cholesterol lowering drugs, and the incidence of heart disease has not gone down at all. So really, cholesterol doesn't stick unless you have inflammation. So we want to look at areas of how we can decrease the inflammation. What I like to, you can have this checked in a lab. You can have your insulin secretion checked by your doctor in a lab. But what I like to do, I'm always about simple things and how to do things low cost, easy. I like to do it myself. A very simple way to check to kind of give an idea of whether you have an insulin issue or an insulin secretion issue is to measure, just take a tape measure and measure your waist and measure your hips. If your waist is any bigger than your hips, really for women we should be slightly smaller, but men, they have about the same, their waist and hip. But if your waist and hips are not, waist is not smaller, we tend to have an insulin issue. And it's really, you know, conventional medicine wants to treat the insulin. I have a lot of people that they're considered pre-diabetic. They get their testing from their doctor. The doctor puts them on metformin or some other drugs because you're pre-diabetic, you have too much insulin, we're gonna, you know, help try to get this into the cells. And it's really not an insulin problem. It's a simple dietary problem. We are eating too much carbohydrate, too much sugar. So let's come around and treat really the real source of the problem. Okay, all calories are not equal. I want you to think about this for a minute. The processed food industry hits us over the head again and again and again that only calories matter. You know, we have 100-calorie snack packs. We have this, you know, these different things that you can look at. It's this many calories. But look at the picture on the right. The same amount of calories in an apple are not used the same as the same amount of calories in, you know, like a fast food burger. Granted, the fast food burger would be much smaller, half there. You know, think about how do we fatten animals? Grains. Anybody know what kind of milk are pigs fed to fatten them? Skim. They will not, farmers have known this. I was blown away when I first heard this, because I did not grow up farming. I was shocked. Why would skim milk make pigs fat, but we're supposed to drink skim milk? I was like, what? You know, farmers know that sugars make animals fat. Fat satisfies the appetite, and it's very interesting. You know, over the years I've talked to a lot of different people that farm, and people that have breeding pigs do not give them skim milk. They only give their pigs that are going to be fattened to be, you know, for our eating. They only give them the skim milk because the pigs, they know that the pigs, given the whole food, the whole milk with the cream on it, it will cause them to satiate, they'll be full, and they don't overeat, they don't fatten. So some of this, I think we just need to stop for a little bit and just think about, you know, what are we doing and what are we being told and what makes sense, you know, what makes common sense? Okay, so can anybody see the connection in the, you know, past 30 years, what's going on maybe with our waistlines increasing as a population? All right, let's take a little bit of a look at where we have come from. You know, the human race developed as hunter-gatherers. We ate when we could, not knowing when our next meal would be, whether it was tomorrow or the next day. And really, we evolved to store excess fat to be used in times of need. The problem is, we don't have times of need anymore. Every cell in our body needs glucose in order to make ATP. I've got a picture here. You guys remember? I kind of went, ooh, when I saw this. Adenosine triphosphate. Remember this in school, in college? Ugh. But that's energy for the cells. And up until about 100 years ago, we didn't have access to very many concentrated carbohydrates or sugars, at least not very often. Our cells only take in what glucose they need, and then the rest will circulate in the blood, or it'll be stored in the liver until it can be used. And if we're so lucky to have more than we can hold, this happens all the time now, but the way that we have evolved from, if we had more than we could hold in the blood and the liver, then we store it first as triglycerides, and then it actually gets stored as body fat. And so when the body senses that it's starving, it releases fat to be used as an energy source for this ATP production. And the key phrase here is senses. When the body senses, the body will only release stored fat when it realizes that new intake of dietary glucose is not forthcoming. So at that point, a chemical switch turns on, and this is our epigenetics. It turns on, telling cells and tissues that are storing the fat to release it, to let it go. And then once dietary glucose becomes available again, once we start eating sugar again, that switch turns on, and we go back to fat storage. In 2000, a professor at Duke University, Dr. Randy Girdle, was studying the agouti mouse. And these mice that's the mouse on the left, fat, yellow. They carry a particular gene called the agouti gene. And this gene makes the mice ravenous and leads to obesity, makes their coat yellow, it's a different color, but it also makes them more prone to get cancer and diabetes. They usually provide their offspring, they pass on that gene. So then they become, same thing, fat as a pincushion, yellow, and susceptible to life-shortening diseases. However, Dr. Girdle, in his research, without altering a single piece of the mouse's DNA, created offspring that were very different. The mouse on the right, much thinner, it's brown, and he did this, he did this by feeding the mother a different diet that contained methyl donors. Then they have a real fancy explanation of methylation, but the basic thing to take away from this is the substances, these methyl donors, are found in foods, like onions, garlic, and beets. Changing DNA. The result was a pup of a different color with the obese gene turned off, and this study showed that supplementation of maternal diet induced alterations in the DNA that were reflected in offspring. Harvard School of Public Health last fall came out with, "It's time to end the low-fat myth." Did anyone hear about this or see it? Nobody. This gets no news coverage. In the 1960s, fats and oils supplied 45% of our calories that we took in. Today, fats and oils supply about 33% of the calories that we eat. So it's gone down. 1960s, 13% of adults were obese. 33% of adults are obese today. In the 1960s, 1% of adults had type 2 diabetes. Today, 11% of adults have type 2 diabetes. Isn't that interesting? So some reasons that the Harvard School of Public Health came up with to contemplate why the low-fat diet isn't working is that the generic lower-fat diet prompts most people to stop eating fats that are good for the heart along with those that are bad. Replacement foods are often easily digested fast carbohydrates or fat-free products full of sugar and refined carbs. The replacement foods digest very quickly, and they cause blood sugar and insulin levels to spike. So there we go again with insulin playing into the picture. I'm going to give you a little bit of SAD statistics, and SAD stands for the Standard American Diet. Of 22 industrialized countries in the U.S. has the highest rate of obesity. We are dead last. We're the fattest. 2/3 of Americans over the age of 20 are overweight, and the overweight category is defined by body mass index, BMI, of 25 to 30. 1/3 of Americans over age 20 are obese, and that would be a body mass index of BMI over 30. We have 80 million people with heart disease. Our national health care expenditure was over $2.5 trillion in 2009. And we have 1.6 million new cases of diabetes being diagnosed in adults 20 years or older annually. They joined the almost 24 million children and adults in the U.S. that we already have with diabetes, making up 8% of the population there. Okay, let's talk about what is the standard American diet. Mainly it's processed foods, things that come in packages, cans, or boxes. It's very high in sugars, starches, processed oils, and typical grocery store meats, poultry, eggs, and produce that are conventionally farmed, like factory farming. And then in the last decade, we have the introduction of genetically modified organisms, the GMOs, which we do not know what GMOs do to us. And that'll be a great movie next week to watch. It's excellent. The effects of the SAD, standard American diet. It lacks nutrients and micronutrients to support essential body functions. Now, nutrient density provides satiety, makes us feel full. When the body doesn't receive the micronutrients and the phytochemicals that it needs to do so many of the incredibly complicated biochemical processes that it has to do, it craves more food. It says, I'm hungry. Fake foods and chemicals cannot be recognized by the body and lead to inflammatory immune responses. The end result is poor health, chronic disease, and often morbid obesity, like we see here in the picture. And this has continued to just be rampant and grow over these last 30 years that we've been preaching the no fat. Processed foods are designed to have a long shelf life. They are not designed to be nourishing. The nutrients and fibers have been removed. They contain the refined sugars, often high fructose corn syrup, that's what HFC stands for, artificial sweeteners, artificial colors, flavors, and chemicals with names that we can't even pronounce, including preservatives and flavor enhancers. They contain trans fats, GMOs, pesticides, and poor quality animal products. Let's talk a little bit now about sugar. For most of human history, consumption of sugar in refined form was virtually zero. This slowly began to change about 2,000 years ago when sugarcane was discovered. However, it's only been in the last couple hundred years that there's been a profound change in this consumption. So in 1750, people took in about 4 pounds of sugar per person per year. And then you can see how we're going to start to just skyrocket ramp right up there. In 1850, it was an average of 20 pounds per person per year. By 1996, we have an 8-fold increase, 160 pounds per person per year. And most estimates now put us at well over 200 pounds of sugar per person per year. So remember, as we eat sugar, our insulin levels rise and the body holds on to fat. Do you think that could have be part of our obesity epidemic? But again, we don't hear that sugar is the culprit. What's wrong with eating sugars? Well, they deplete our own vitamins and minerals in order to be digested. So we have to give up our own stores. They replace nutrient-dense foods in the diet. Refined sugars lack vitamins, minerals, and enzymes that are found in natural sugars, so they end up being empty calories. And they encourage pathogenic yeast proliferation. Anybody heard of Candida? I see a lot of people with Candida. Sugar is a huge problem with that. Besides sugar, we're eating the wrong kinds of fat. And just to give you a little history of when these vegetable oils came into existence, got a little slide here that corn oil came about in 1898. Before that, there was no corn oil. Cottonseed oil came around in 1911. Soybeans were in the 1930s and became the most popular oil used in the 50s and 60s. And then canola oil came about in the mid-70s and was approved for use in the US in 1985. So all of these oils are a product of the Industrial Revolution. They're processed by refining, bleaching, deodorizing. My next slide, I'll show you a little bit more of that, the yucky stuff that goes on. All the oils are solvent extracted using hexane, which is a hydrocarbon obtained chiefly from refining crude oil, and hexanes are a significant constituent of gasoline. Doesn't that sound yummy? Hexane's been phased out in the pharmaceutical industry due to its long-term toxicity, but it's still being used to refine these oils. And interestingly enough, the 4 biggest genetically modified crops are corn, soy, cottonseed, and rapeseed, which is canola. So what did we use before we had all these vegetable oils that have been claimed that they are good for us? Well, we used animal fats. We used things like chicken fat, butter, lard, all from properly raised animals because we didn't use a factory farm when we lived on small farms. Some places, depending on where you lived, coconut and palm oil and olive oil. I'll give you just a little personal example. This was kind of funny. The other day I went to a networking thing in the morning, and there was some breakfast there, and I said I had already eaten, and someone leaned over and said, "Oh, great, what did you have?" The dietitian, "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" "Kale juice." And I said, "No, actually, I don't do a lot of potatoes, but I said I actually had some organic red skin potatoes with a little onion and garlic, and it was cooked in bacon grease, and I had some bacon." And this guy just about fell off his chair. We buy good quality meats, properly raised meats, and when animal foods are pastured and not given hormones and antibiotics, they're actually really good for us. And we save then the fat, and I use that for cooking. It tastes delicious, and then we save the bones, and I make that into broth, and it kind of, again, it's a frugal thing, but it also is using everything that you have and tastes delicious. Okay, so this slide, Judy and I came across this, and we like to use this, shows it's the margarine manufacturing process, but really all of these 4 oils that we're talking about go through this process. And just to give you an idea, most of us, we tend to not know this because we aren't involved anymore in where our foods are coming from or how it's being produced. And so you can see soybean, corn, and cottonseed or canola seeds, the oils are extracted by high temperature and pressure. So right there, it's like, ooh, not feeling the best. Then the remaining fraction of oils are removed with hexane, there's the chemical again, and other solvents, so we add more to it. Oils are now rancid, so they have to be steam cleaned to remove all the and then that removes all the vitamins and the antioxidants, but it keeps the pesticides and the solvents there, it doesn't remove those. Then the oils are mixed with a nickel catalyst. The oils and the catalysts are subjected to hydrogen gas in high pressure, high temperature reactor. This is hydrogenation. We'll talk a little bit more about that. This is trans fats. Then soap-like emulsifiers are mixed in. The oil has to be steam cleaned again to remove the horrible odor. Then it becomes this gray color that would be so unappetizing we have to bleach it. Then artificial flavors, synthetic vitamins, and natural colors are added back in. The mixture is packaged in blocks or tubs if it's going to be margarine. And then advertising promotes it as a health food. What most people don't realize is that we consume these oils on a daily basis in our coffee creamers, salad dressings, mayonnaise, and butter replacements or margarines. And so I really will focus on reading ingredients, and we'll talk about that more, but these are things you want to get out of your diet. They are essentially rancid fats, and they've been oxidized, and that goes hand in hand with inflammation. So chronic things, pain is inflammation, but many diseases are inflammatory, and we don't want to have inflammation. Trans fats, talk a little bit about this now. The production process of injecting liquid fats with hydrogen gas converts them into indigestible trans fatty acids. Their shape keeps them from being recognized by human lipase enzymes, our fat enzymes, and makes them more prone to things like arterial deposition and subsequent plaque formation. That is heart disease, heart problems. Trans fats cannot be metabolized in the human body. However, they're absorbed into your cell membranes where healthy, essential fats should be. Trans fats irreversibly disrupt cell membrane function and communication. And the half-life of trans fats inside of us is 51 days. So that means one serving of trans fats can stay in our body for 3 to 4 months. Diets high in manufactured trans fats correlate with higher risk of type 2 diabetes. There's quite a few studies there with 300,000 individuals and more. Mayo Clinic calls trans fats double trouble for your heart health. They state that trans fats increase your LDL, that's your bad cholesterol. They decrease your HDL, that's your good cholesterol. Increase your triglycerides, and they increase a lipoprotein that promotes buildup of plaque in your arteries and cause more inflammation. When I talk about trans fats, I like to point out the nutrition facts label. This is why I encourage people to read ingredients. Nutrition, the food industry has a lot of money and has worked out a lot of deals, lobbyists and things, but trans fats can actually be in foods, but if the serving size has a ½ gram of trans fat or less, they can legally label it as saying 0 trans fats. But if you read the ingredients and you see hydrogenated anything, you will know it's trans fats. So the example is you can have a serving be 1 cookie, and again, if you don't eat packaged foods, you're not going to get this, but the 1 cookie or 1 cracker will say that, well, it'll actually have a ½ gram of trans fat in it, but it'll say 0 trans fats because it's a ½ gram or under. And then you eat 4 cookies, and you're actually getting 2 grams of trans fat from your 4 little cookies or your 4 little crackers. And that stuff we don't want it in our body. Okay, so we're talking about a lot of things we don't want and should be on the positive. And I'll get to that, but I always tell people, stay positive. What should we be doing? Well, we need to be eating real food. I mean, this is such common sense. Some people are just like, are you kidding me? That's it. Real foods don't come from a can, a package, or a box. They're not genetically modified. We want to read the ingredients. We want to see what is actually in that food, not just look at that nutrition facts label. Focus on your health, not the scale. This is a hard one for a lot of people. We don't even own a scale. But I can tell you, I sure know where I'm at weight-wise by the fit of my clothes and how I feel. So try to not be as focused. It's okay to have a scale and to weigh yourself, but try to not be as focused. I think we have that machine mentality model. I need to know this, I have to have a test, or I have to have that, instead of actually feeling, getting in touch a little bit with where we are at. No dieting. Already kind of discussed that at the beginning, but this is about lifestyle change. And then I've got on there no junk food. We want to get rid of the junk food. Really what I find is as you transition to eating this way, the processed foods don't taste good to you anymore. And that does take a while. It's not going to happen instantly. But I am amazed when I go somewhere and somebody's having s'mores at a campfire. I can't stand to eat. I still like a marshmallow with a graham cracker. The chocolate, Hershey's chocolate, tastes like chemical to me. And again, it's just as you change, your taste buds change as well. And then, people, it's baby steps, but eventually you don't want the processed stuff because it's not nourishing. We've been addicted to it, and then once we get away from it, we can actually see that. Okay, so what do I mean by whole foods? Well, traditional foods that have been used for millennia to nourish. It's eliminating industrially prepared chemicals and fats. They can be grown organic or biodynamic, grown on soil that has fewer chemicals and is rich and diverse in microbial activity. Fermented foods, which support a healthy inner body ecology. Those are wonderful, and we'll get to some examples of those, but those are wonderful whole foods, real foods. And we want to read, again, focusing in on this ingredients on the food labels. We want to read food labels. Avoid products that are light or low fat. The fat's replaced with empty calorie sweeteners. And this came out, we were actually in Florida for spring break last month, and I was really proud of my daughter. It's always interesting to see, are your kids going to embrace this, or I have teenagers, or are they not? And we were with Grandma. Grandma had done all the grocery shopping, which was wonderful, and she tries really hard to do the right things. And my daughter was eating this yogurt, and it's Publix is a grocery store down there. So it said, Publix low-fat yogurt, no high fructose corn syrup. Great, sounds good. This thing has 37 grams, I don't know if you guys, can you see that? 37 grams of carbohydrate in this little yogurt. And my daughter pointed out, we have a Coke over here, but she actually had ginger ale. She said, look at that, ginger ale has 36 grams of carbohydrate. The yogurt has more carb than a pop. Like, what the heck is going on? Interestingly enough, this one has high fructose corn syrup, this one doesn't, but still, when we are looking at insulin levels, that is way too much carb in a little yogurt, which used to be, yogurt started out as something very healthy, but again, we've sugared it to that. Okay, also avoid things that have a long list of ingredients, things like high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, the hydrogenated or the GMO oils. Keep those four, remembering soybean, unless it says organic, they're GMO. It's soybean, corn, cottonseed, and canola. So, look on your ingredient labels for those things. And remember, whole foods are nutrient dense. I love this cartoon. We'll just go through it. If food products were honestly labeled, we've got up here at the top, cheese food, question, does it even have any cheese in it? Chemical helper, artery clog, heart disease spread, acrylamide chips, doesn't that sound yummy? Zero nutrition puffs, colon cancer dogs, wow, who wants those? For sure diabetes drink, I love this one, obesity pop, all natural. Yeah. And then you've got in the cart ADHD flakes. Processed foods, again, are a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're not designed to nourish us. This is about, making money. Okay, so what are some other things to look at when you're embracing this? Are you drinking enough water? You need at least 48 ounces of water a day. Ideally, half your body weight. So listen, half your body weight in ounces is how much water you should drink. So a 150-pound person would need 75 ounces of water. So that's something, it's not that you have to go and immediately do that, but start paying attention to how much water are you actually consuming. And make sure that it's not loaded with chlorine and fluoride like city water. You want it to be pure water. And our bodies, we're 70% water, so we need to replace that. Get in touch with your body and eat only when you are hungry. This becomes much easier when you eat real food. You can identify real hunger. So, remember, that's going to be a little bit of a process. As insulin levels come down, you'll start to recognize, oh, I'm actually hungry. I'm not just hungry, ravenous all the time. Use a smaller plate. A lot of us, so many things here have become bigger is better, and so we have these huge platters, and when you put just normal serving sizes on there, it looks very empty and it looks like you're being deprived. So use like a measure it, look and see what size your plate is. A 7-inch plate is a very nice size. So take a look at that and see if that helps control portion sizes a little bit. The guidelines from the government, we finally now gotten away from the food guide pyramid, which is good. but half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. Most of us, half our plate is some type of a casserole or something. It's not fruits and vegetables. So start looking at that. Set realistic goals. I have a lot of people that say, well, I want to be my high school weight or a certain size. Be realistic. Were you done growing in high school? Have you increased muscle? Have you changed? You really want to get in touch with where do you feel your best. Do you feel healthy? Are you feeling good? Are your clothes fitting better? And then make a decision of where you want to go. Don't be so set on what the scale says or what maybe the doctor, I've had that too, where sometimes doctors will say, well, you're supposed to be this many pounds for your weight, and some people, or for your height. And some people get very frustrated by that because they were never that weight their whole entire life. So it's about being realistic. Eat breakfast. This is on the handout that I have at the back. I'm not sure how we ever got onto sugary, starchy things for breakfast. That's not what we want to have. So sometimes we want to think outside the box a little bit and go for leftovers, things that have protein and fat, things like that are going to hold us over and not just make that insulin go sky high and make us ravenous for the rest of the day. And then slow down. Enjoy food. Enjoy each bite. And I put a little picture of a cow. Granted, they have a totally different digestive system, but cows, they chew. They bring it back, chew. That's what we need to do. Chew your food well. It gives your body time to know that you are full. Most of us scarf it down and don't, realize we miss that trigger that we were full and go beyond it, and then we don't feel well. Turn off the TV. Not only does watching TV decrease your physical activity, that's how the term couch potato became, but it's so sad to see kids eating processed foods in front of the TV, looking like this. Kids shouldn't have to carry that extra weight. We have farm animals, and I know when I carry a 50-pound bag of something and have to carry it upstairs or far or whatever, that is hard work. And I think about how many of us have that extra weight on us all the time, and that's so difficult for our joints, for our body. So turn off the TV. It's also easier to not be exposed to all the commercials. As you start to do this, start trying to kind of break free of the junk food. You don't have that temptation of all the junk that's there all the time. Eventually you'll get to a place, like I said, where it doesn't, you go, ooh, that looks bad. But initially, because most of us are really drawn to that, you want to get away from that. And then the other thing too is you just tend to disconnect from your body when you're watching TV, and you miss those cues that you are full. So at least do not eat in front of the TV. Enjoy face-to-face company. I think it's even nice. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. You don't have to be religious. But if you can just take a moment to think about, food is nourishing. So before you eat, if you could just think of a moment of how that is going to nourish you, you don't have to, like I said, make it about religion if that you're not comfortable with that. But taking the time, I don't know how we ever got in such a hurry, or what we're in such a hurry to do. I love this book. It's called A Life Unburdened, Getting Overweight and On With My Life. This guy, Richard Morris, that's actually him in the background here. He was over 400 pounds, and he had tried every diet out there. And I don't remember, I've read the book, I don't remember how he decides. He's a contractor working in New York City, so he's in hotels all the time, but one night he decides just to eat some simple chicken and vegetables. It's from a restaurant from carryout. It's not the best by any means, but he gets just some chicken and vegetables, and notices the next morning he actually, and he doesn't have his soda, he usually drinks a lot of diet soda, notices the next morning that he actually feels somewhat better. And so he goes on this journey of eating real food, getting the processed foods out, and he struggled his whole entire life with weight, and he ends up losing over 160 pounds. It changes his life, his family. They have 2 kids, and he speaks. He wrote a book, and he speaks now. he's amazing. I've seen him. So, you know, take a look at things like that, or you can look it up on the internet. I just want to point out moderation. You know, we talk a lot about anything in moderation is okay, but really with a lot of our food today, moderation is a false concept with the processed food industry, because everything we are eating is processed. You know, I get very upset. My professional development, the American Dietetic Association, they have contracts with Coca-Cola, and they say, oh, anything is okay in moderation. I'm like, no, it's not. Soda is not, you know, soda is not in there. And I'll talk about some suggestions for that in a minute. And then for those dealing with emotional issues in food, which there's a lot of us, find things that resonate with you. You know, take a look at, I like this one for women, when women stop hating their bodies. This is another one that, I haven't read that one, it's been recommended to me, 50 Ways to Soothe Yourself Without Food. And this is another thing to remember with our kids. Please don't reward them with food. I can't believe how often that comes up, that somebody says, oh, if you do well, I've had this with my kids in middle school, if you do well, you're gonna get a Mountain Dew and a bag of Doritos. What? Why would you, food should not be a reward. You know, food should be, it should be nourishing, it should be enjoyable. It's something that we need to do to live, but it shouldn't be that we do it, you know, that we live to eat. We want to eat to live, not live to eat. And most of us really have to redevelop a healthy relationship with food. So take, you know, give yourself a break and kind of take some time with that as well. Okay. Avoiding artificial sweeteners. That's in my handout. You know, it's never been shown that artificial sweeteners help people eat less. It's the exact opposite, actually. The body thinks something sweet is coming, doesn't get it, and, you know, wants more. This book, Sweet Deception, written by Dr. Mercola, is a great book exposing how the artificial sweeteners have gotten into our food system and the history behind there. Eat plenty of good fats and proteins. You know, they'll help satisfy you. Things like, and we have some wonderful things in the back here, chia seeds. I just started eating these like a year ago. I remember the Chia Pet, we were talking about that in the back. It's like, who knew these things they're loaded with omega-3s and they're very good for you. Need to soak them or put them in something that will soak. Avocados, coconut oil is a wonderful fat. Use coconut oil all the time. Oriana has it in bulk. They sell jars of it as well, but they have it in bulk. And eggs, properly raised eggs. And since I mentioned that, I just want to show the difference between a pastured egg, a chicken that can go outside and eat bugs and grass and greens and all the stuff that chickens eat, versus a caged, grain-fed. Look at the difference. That is nutrient density. This is nutrient dense. This is not. This is pale and lacking vitamins and minerals. You know, that's what we become. Do we want to be pale and anemic, or do we want to be rich and full of energy? So think about those things. Whoever said that chickens were vegetarians, it's way off base. If you've ever kept chickens, they are not vegetarians at all. And then alcohol. This chart I like shows just some of the calories and what that's equivalent to in foods. Your lowest calories will be liquor. You know, it's the two gin and tonics is 104 calories. I mean, look at that. 3 beers with 5% alcohol, 727 calories. These are empty calories. So use sparingly, and have them only with a meal. You know, microbrews, at least they haven't been pasteurized. Wine has not been pasteurized, but have it small amounts with a meal. I'm amazed at the number of people that, when they just cut back on the empty calories of alcohol, have significant weight loss. Because again, it's another carb, huge number of empty carbohydrate calories. Be a nutrivore. I love that term. It's someone concerned with eating the most nutrient-dense foods. You know, the majority of people in our country are overfed but undernourished. So we eat too many calories but not enough of these micronutrients and phytonutrients because everything's processed. So look for things, you know, variety of color. Eat a rainbow. You want lots of variety. And then there's a picture over here of the fermented and cultured foods, which we're going to try some of them. But they are loaded with B vitamins, C vitamins. Not only are they good for you, but they taste great. And Oriana has a wonderful selection of these, and they're also easy to make yourself. I love this book. It is The Complete Idiot's Guide to Fermenting. And here's a picture of some salsa. This is actually fermented hummus. These are all fermented. Fermented hummus with sourdough, make your own sourdough tortilla chips. And these are fermented root vegetables. You can ferment anything. That's what we did before we had refrigeration. And my favorite is eggs. I do fermented eggs, and that's actually my go-to almost all the time. Anybody that likes hard-boiled eggs, it's like it's got the flavoring on it already, so you don't have to add salt. They're delicious, and they end up being beautiful colors depending on what you ferment them in. And to me, these fermented foods, they're the ultimate fast foods. Once you make them or have them, then they're ready all the time. It's a quick meal. It's something easily you can take on the go. What else? Just be mindful of a lot of people. We need to look at the 5 whites. White flour, white sugar, white rice, white potato, and dairy. Those can be, if people are still having troubles, those are the places to focus. And I think about my great-grandmother always knew, don't eat the whites. If you want to lose weight, don't eat the white stuff. It's starchy, it's sugary. If you are a soda drinker or a pop drinker, you want to add like mineral water to make a fizz. You can always add that to a little bit of juice. You can try kombucha. I think we have kombucha to try back here. Lovely. That's got that fizz. So that's a great way. Soda is just, not only is it empty calories or artificial sweeteners, but that phosphoric acid that they carbonate it with is very, very bad for our bones. It just leaches minerals out of us. Watch Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. I love this. It's available for free on the web. This is one of my favorite movies. Does a great job of explaining a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight. Think about adding some fresh vegetable and fruit juices to your diet. Picture of a juicer. We have a Breville. That's the same one that's in the Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And then other things to remember, don't despair. If you hit a weight loss plateau, a lot of people get very discouraged. And the thing to remember is it's like when you clean house. If you do a deep cleaning of something, it looks terrible while you're going through that. But when you put things all together, it's nice and clean. A lot of that is going on with our bodies. Things have to heal. Things have to get reorganized. So, keep a food journal. If you're hitting a plateau, start keeping a food journal. And a lot of times, too, you can go back and figure out, sugar's here, or things that I didn't realize, empty calories coming in here. So don't be too hard on yourself. Okay, and then in addition to changes in nutrition, lifestyle changes make a huge difference. Exercise, this is one that we think we have to go to a gym or do all these really intense things. Just pick something you enjoy and be active. It can be walking. It can be, laying on the floor and putting little babies, messing around, doing some things with them, with their weight. Things that you enjoy and you want to stick with. That's the key. We don't want to have something where it's like it's a drag and then you're only going to stick with it for a little bit. It's the same idea as the diet. You don't want to have a diet. You don't want to have an exercise. You need to just be active and be moving. Think about stress relief, things like yoga, meditation, prayer, things to relax and renew you, and then practice daily and develop a routine. Don't underestimate love and support. We need group support. Practice fluent listening, prayer, forgiveness, touch, and commitment. These are things that a lot of times have gotten lost in our fast, busy world. So don't underestimate that. And then keep a positive attitude toward yourself and others. Remember, we're whole, we're mind, body, and spirit, and we want to address all of them. So in summary, eat whole foods and avoid processed and fast foods. Read those ingredient labels. Want to decrease and avoid sugar and the white foods. Want to eat breakfast, and remember, not the sugary, starchy. You need to have some good fats, some good proteins. Want to be a nutrivore, and that's nutrient-dense foods. Adding cultured foods is a wonderful way to do that. And stay positive and see yourself at a healthy weight. That's the other thing too. If you are focused on, I can't do this, it's no big surprise, that's what you attract. So remember that, kind of put a twist on that of what you are wanting, keep it positive.